You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and very useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I thank all of you each and every week. And I will continue to thank you because, as I say, our listeners grow because of you. Thank you so much for sharing our podcasts with your friends and family and, other associates of yours, possibly. Many of you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and many of you go right to our website, which is boomerstodayradio.com, and you could catch all the podcasts there. And I know for sure that the reason our listeners are growing and the reason we actually get many people reaching out to us to be on our podcasts is, because we've got great people. We've had great people on the podcast, and we're not going to disappoint you today. We have with us Dr. Nancy Taylor, who is founder and CEO of Taylormade Senior Advocacy and Consulting. As an advocate, she helps older adults and their families navigate the complex maze that is our national healthcare system. She provides a guiding hand with Medicare education, including choosing drug plans, provider and care coordination, comprehensive clinical medical reviews, and medication therapy management. She retired as a pharmacist after over a decade in community pharmacy and started her company to better serve her aging patients. The transition from pharmacist to advocate was natural and empowering for both Dr. Taylor and those she serves. Dr. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah,
I love talking about the older population, and
there's a lot. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to talk about. So, I'm just interested in your bio, the fact that you had this, work as a pharmacist, which is quite a specialty, and you made the decision to move to transition from a pharmacist to an advocate for seniors. Tell us a little bit more about that. What went into that decision? Are you happy with that decision?
Well, Frank, I will say that the decision was gradual to a point, and then it was almost instantaneous. And I would say, a number of my BFFs are older. So I have a good connection with those older generations. And I used to be able to spend quality time with my patients when they would come in, whether it was to counsel them with medications, whether it was to talk about new situations that have come up in their healthcare, or even if it's to catch up on a trip they took or their kids or something like that. I used to be able to do that. I used to have the time to be able to spend with them. And then that time, due to constraints of my job, got shorter and shorter. And then I would sometimes not even be able to talk to my patients. And some would say, I meet them in the grocery or at church, and they say, I saw the other day and I thought I'd stop, but you look so busy, I just didn't want to interrupt. And boy, that broke my heart. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, please come by. Please wave at me, holler at me. I will stop what I'm doing to visit with you. I miss that connection. And so as we ended up getting more and more issues that were moving toward COVID, and we ended up having to do a whole lot more with a whole lot less. We had less staffing. We were now doing testing, antibody testing, and then we were now doing we were then giving COVID vaccine, and my time with my patients just seemed to go away. And I thought, I am not servicing my patients. This is not what I got into this business for. And so what I thought was going to happen 5 years from now, as my husband and I moved to retirement, it just kind of went, no, now is the time. You know, you just need to do it now. So we crunched the numbers. We did everything that we could on the personal end and went, yes, I'm going to do this. So
Right.
I gave my notice and moved over into advocacy, where I can devote my time and my resources and services to my patients, now my clients, because that's what I need to do and that's what they need from me.
So, an area that you obviously know a whole lot about, and that's, medications. As you know, I've been in the senior care industry for quite some time. And one of the areas that we deal with each and every day are seniors that, have a fall risk. And there could be a lot of reasons that they, are falling or have a greater chance of falling. And I'm not saying that this is the majority of the cases, but we see way too often of particular seniors just being over medicated. All right. And that could right there be the cause of, that falls or the risk of those falls. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And over medication, which is very common, happens honestly accidentally. And the reason I say that is we live in a society where we see our provider gives us prescriptions, and those prescriptions cause side effects. Drugs just cause side effects. And so what happens is we talk with our doctor, they prescribe a medication, we have a side effect, we talk with our doctor again, and they say, oh, well, we can give you this to treat this side effect. So we're adding another medication. And then we have a problem. We're like, okay, well, that kind of cleared up, but now I kind of feel like this. So I like talk to my doctor again. And the doctor says, oh, okay, well, we can treat that with this medication. So now we're adding another medication. So what we're creating is this prescribing cascade where we're treating side effects with other medications when we had just an original diagnosis that we were treating. And by adding all of those medications, then we can create those issues. But keep in mind too, Frank, that we are a society where we feel that we are very autonomous. We want to control our own destiny, whether it's medical, whether it's, social. And so we have the opportunity here in the United States to self-medicate. We have all these over-the-counter medications, we have herbals, we have supplements. And so what do? We feel a certain way. We see on TV or friends tell us, or, we even ask our pharmacist for recommendations on treating certain conditions. So we also self-medicate. So in addition to prescription medication, we're also self-medicating, and we have lots and lots of pills that we're taking every day that we didn't realize added up. And we do have cause for that over medication. And that can lead to a whole lot of issues for our older population.
You mentioned watching TV. I mean, I don't know if it's because of the shows I watch, not that I watch a lot of TV, but the commercial, it's all they it's all they promote are, these commercials. And I even asked my doctor, I said, do people really come to you and say, I saw this advertisement on TV for this medication, it's a prescription medication, and come to you and say, I'd like to try that? She goes, all the time. It kind of blew me away, but I guess that happens. That's why they keep advertising, right?
It does. And, they do go to their doctor, and the doctor, hears it all of the time. So does the pharmacist. Right. I can't count the number of times that people would come to me and say, I saw this ad on TV. Do you think that'll work for me? Can I ask my doctor for that? And that was so common. And, honestly, pharmacists, we are the final person that can police the medication before it goes to the patient for safety. We do those safety checks. So then when people come to us and ask us this, we don't always have the time right then to pull up their entire profile and possibly look at it. And then honestly, they're coming to us just wanting confirmation. When they come to the pharmacist, I see this, should I ask my doctor? Well, they already want to. And they just want a confirmation from the pharmacist going, sure, yeah, you should ask your doctor about that. And here's where that whole time thing came from. And another reason why I moved from behind the counter to in front of the counter.
Right.
I can take the time with that patient and say, well, let's really talk about this. If this is something you're interested in, let's sit down and have this conversation about whether this would be a good choice or not.
So talk to me about, many times we will advise the family when we hear, because we're not experts in all these medications, but when we hear somebody is on a lot of medications and they're having issues, we usually say, maybe you should go to a geriatrician. Okay. So in a geriatrician, what a geriatrician is, of course, and for those that don't, think about it as an opposite of a pediatrician. They're just dealing with the elderly, but they're usually people who are pretty familiar with, medications and all that. So is that something similar? What you're helping families with is to try to help them manage their medications and actually communicate with their doctor?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I get involved, if there's, like you were referring to, the fall risk, or person who is constantly dizzy all the time, or lethargic, or maybe it's chronic constipation or something like that, you really should think medication first. And so what I'm able to do in my advocacy business is I'm able to take a good look through those comprehensive medication reviews of everything that person is on, plus looking at their disease state, so their chronic conditions. And let's take a look. What could be causing these things? And that's one of the things that a pharmacist can do that works in together as a team with their provider, whether they are seeing a geriatrician, whether they are seeing their primary care physician, because we can be that frontline person that helps the provider in de-prescribing, getting people off of medications that are no longer necessary. Maybe they are causing that effect. Maybe we've got dual medication that's happening and people aren't understanding that because one medication was prescribed by a specialist, and then maybe the primary care prescribed something in that same class, but they didn't communicate. And so this patient's been taking both of these medications, which has been causing a side effect that's really affecting their quality of life. So I come in, I see this, and then I work with their healthcare team to get this this problem resolved so that the client no longer has those types of feelings and leads to better outcomes and quality of life.
Got it. Got it. So we're going to take a real quick break, I promise, just to recognize our sponsor. And then when we get back, certainly we'll let everybody know how they could learn more about you and get a hold of you. But we'll talk about what you just brought up, some of the challenges of working with several doctors and maybe even several pharmacies. But we'll come when we come back, we'll talk about that. So, do you know anybody who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authority's Beyond Driving with Dignity program is the facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So to learn more, go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com or call 877-907-8841 to connect with the Senior Care Authority advisor in your area. We're back with Dr. Nancy Taylor, the founder and CEO of Taylormade Senior Advocacy and Consulting. And we're talking about medications and some of the challenges in managing medications for the elderly. So, Dr. Taylor, you before we took our break, you brought up about, maybe before we even get into that question, let's do this. Why don't you tell our listeners, if they wanted to, get a hold of you or learn more about what you're doing, how would they go about doing that?
Thank you for asking that, Frank, because that is very important information to get out there.
That's right.
So, my website is www.drtadvocacy.com, and that is the DRT. So it's kind of the abbreviation, drtadvocacy.com. I am available there. You can find a lot of information and learn about me and my services. You can also drop me an email at Nancy, standard spelling, Nancy, at drtadvocacy.com. I am always willing to chat online, and you can even just give me a call at 877-216-7450.
So, because you're doing advocacy work, all right, for families, you could service families wherever they're located, correct?
I can.
Okay.
I absolutely can.
Great.
One thing I do, because I'm out here in the West, I'm in Utah, is where my physical location is. And out here, everybody drives. You got to drive somewhere to get somewhere. And so I service in person, 100-mile radius from my home. And then I also work nationwide. The services that I provide can be done anywhere.
Right. And so you do it either via Zoom or just on the phone or different ways.
That's correct.
Great.
You bet. I love that connection. Like I had said earlier, that was what I was missing, which is why I changed from pharmacy, from behind the bench, to moving into advocacy. So I love to have those face-to-face Zoom, and I talking on the phone, absolutely. So however it works best for the client, we just make it happen. I'm here
That's
to
great.
problem solve.
Great. So I've got a question. Let's say, and I'm sure this has happened to you, that it's your feeling that a particular patient is kind of over-medicated, okay? Maybe it's, whatever analysis you have done. So you're not agreeing with the doctor. what happens?
All right. In a situation like that, where
Was it? I
feel
told you I wouldn't give you tough, really difficult questions. Maybe that was a difficult one. Sometimes that could be
that's
tough, I
okay.
guess. Okay.
That's okay, because if I don't agree with it, and there's definitely like an invisible wall there, and that's professional to professional, I can only imagine how it is between that professional and his patient and family, because they're not getting anywhere, and if this patient really is over medicated and it's causing problems, then the family needs to look at other avenues. And that's why I'm there, because ultimately we have got to have the best long-term outcome and safety for that patient. And if
will you get it? Will you get on the phone and call the doctor and say,
yeah,
"Hey, I'm seeing this," and okay, got it.
Yeah. Exactly. I become the one who takes this on. So I work with the doctors. I work with the nurses. I am the one that says, okay, this is the problem we have, and unfortunately, if it gets to a point where that doctor's not willing, then we'll find one that is, because, like I said, that patient's safety and well-being is number one.
Great.
And so I will, I'll move the hills if I have to make sure that we're doing the right thing for this patient.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to bring up two subject matters, but kind of similar. Some of the challenges when people are dealing. Obviously, everybody has. I don't want to say everybody, but most older people have more than one doctor. All right, and if they're in a particular system where the doctors aren't necessarily communicating with each other. Obviously, you got systems where doctors have full access to everything going on. I happen to be a big believer in that type of a system, but it's not the case everywhere. So you got those challenges. Then you have the challenge, which I really never thought about until speaking to you, going, well, what if they use different pharmacies also? Okay, so talk to us about some of the challenges and how you help families through those situations.
Absolutely. One of the services that I offer is provider coordination, because what you're speaking of is very common. Older adults, on average, have, probably 3 to 5 physicians in their lives. They've got a PCP, they've got their primary care physician, then they probably have a couple of specialists depending on their disease condition. They may have a certain educator, and then they have a pharmacist, at least one pharmacist. And all of those they just are not usually in that same network like you were talking about, that you promote.
Right.
And so it's very important that everybody's on the same page, because this is where we have issues of drugs getting dropped, labs getting dropped, things not being ordered in time because someone believes that someone else is doing it. And the patient honestly believes that the providers talk to one another, and they don't. And so what I do is I come in and I make sure that I have all of the information so that I can make sure everybody's on the same page. Because if we lose something in a transition of care, or the people aren't communicating, then that can lead to a problem down the road, and unfortunately, maybe a hospitalization for the client. And then we have to bring into the fact that it's on average, a person has multiple pharmacies. They're getting their regular medication from their favorite pharmacy, retail pharmacy, but due to the cost of medications, sometimes their insurances push them to mail order for their maintenance meds. And then maybe they're also seeing a compounding pharmacy for a specialty med. So that's 3 right there. So, and those pharmacies do not get to see what each other pharmacy is doing. So they don't even get a full picture of that person's medication regimen. And so then I come in and I'm like, okay, let's take a look at all of this. And we need to make sure that everybody understands this and that we haven't lost something somewhere, and keep that going. And then we're able to work within those multiple pharmacies to make sure that there is going to be adherence, that we're not going to be missing medications, or maybe we're seeing duplications because those pharmacies couldn't communicate. And then we pull off like, oh, we got 2 medications coming from the same med coming from 2 places. So that's where, I can step in and bring that all together to provide, relief and safety to the patient and the family, because that's a whole lot for them to manage. They're dealing with a lot of different people, a lot of medications, and they're dealing with their chronic conditions, and they still want a high quality of life. Well,
right.
Okay,
Right.
Let me take this off your plate and make sure that it's managed so that you can have that best quality of life.
Yeah, great. So, unfortunately, we only have a couple minutes left, but I'm going to make the assumption here that when you start working with a new patient, new person, you do what you call a comprehensive clinical medication review. All right. If my assumption is correct, tell us a little bit more what that's about, and then we'll have to finish up. All right.
You bet. So those comprehensive clinical medication reviews, those are a very in-depth analysis of all of their medications, and not just medications, but we're looking at their chronic conditions. I'm looking at labs. I'm looking at values, whether they're blood pressure, whether they are glucose. I'm looking at discharge or transitions of care that they've had. And I am analyzing the possibility of drug-drug interactions, drug-disease interactions, over medication, dual medication, and where we can possibly deprescribe those patients. If you can get all of that into a concise type of regimen, that is the key to working with their providers in making sure that everything is working as it should be, as tight as it should be. And that is what is going to lead to better long-term outcomes for our clients and patients.
Great. Dr. Nancy Taylor, thank you so much for joining us. Check it out at drtadvocacy.com. Thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everybody for joining us on Boomers Today. Please be safe. And we will talk to everybody next week.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.